Hello everyone, I welcome you to the module 26th of the NPTEL course of UN SDGs. So in this module we are going to cover interrelationships and connections between the 17 SDGs and SDG structure and order at levels of people, ecological and spiritual, SDG 1 to 10, SDG 11 to 15 and 16 to 17. So the first topic, so this lecture is going to cover all 17 SDGs which were adopted by United Nations in year 2015, and we will explore this interrelationships among them and connections between their goals. Well, ultimately they are all aiming at like ending poverty, protecting the planet, ensuring prosperity for everyone in all respects, including all other living and non-living like beings, other species of this world. Okay, so we will examine how each goal has specific targets and indicators and how they are interconnected and interdependent to each other. We will also explore some examples of how these goals can be achieved and why it is important to work towards them in a holistic and integrated manner. So as we all know, SDGs were adopted by United Nations in year 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. They address various aspects of sustainable development and are grouped into three main categories. First one for the people, second one for the ecology, and third one at spiritual level. So for assessing interactions, you will typically see these seven like labels of like an interrelationship. Okay, so these are divided here as like a +3 indivisible, +2 reinforcing, +1 enabling, ±0 consistent, like as it is maintaining the same status, and from here it goes starts going down in negative, like -1 constraining, -2 counteracting and -3 cancelling. Okay, so if you see their meaning, inherent meaning, they mean progress on one target automatically delivers progress on another. So that is the +3 one, that is indivisible. +2 reinforcing means progress on one target makes it easier to make progress on another. Third one enabling, +1, progress on one target creates conditions that enable progress on another. ±0 consistent, there is no significant link between the two targets progress. Okay, so this is this situation. And -1 progress on one target constrains the options for how to deliver on another. -2 progress on one target makes it more difficult to make progress on another. And -3 cancelling, progress on one target automatically leads to a negative impact on another. So we will see some more specific like details about these seven like labels. You can see them like listed over here. So -3 cancelling, the most negative interaction is where progress in one goal makes it impossible to reach another goal and possibly leads to a deteriorating state of the second. A choice has to be made between the two. For example, national security objectives make it impossible to have fully transparent and democratically accountable decision making in the government. Another example is the full protection of nature reserves versus public access for recreational purposes or access by pastoralists who traditionally traverse the reserve during their seasonal migrations. Here, a balance needs to be struck based on both political judgment and scientific assessment. So you see in both of these like examples which are given over here, it's a contradictory situation. Okay, so for example like cases of national security. Okay, so some degree of privacy, some degree of like a secrecy it needs to be maintained in order to like deal with like such situations which are for essential for national security situations. right? So this comes in a contradictory, like a situations. That's why, we are calling it at -3 level, that is, like a cancelling, because one actually totally cancels out the second one. Like, what is the cancelling factor over here? A democratically and accountable decision making in the government. Okay, so this has to be, like transparent. This has to be, like accountable. This should be, publicly accessible, to everyone, all the participants, all the stakeholders of the country. But the, like essential, like nature of this, like a being, like a private and secret and all for the national security, it comes in the contradiction. Okay, so this is the situation which comes, makes it like, cancelling in nature, right? The second example is given here for, like a national reserves, like the areas where, like a human society need not go and, like a disturb or bother, like the animals and plant life, in that particular area. But for actually recreational purposes, or maybe some other, like a purposes, some movement, must be actually given, otherwise it will be a total no-go zone. Okay, that also will become, like a problem, right? So it cannot be a totally no-go zone, but it has to be, maintained in a proper, like if you see here, politically judgment and scientific assessment. So with the help of, like these two, like this decision actually needs to be maintained, to facilitate, like access to national reserve, like regions, right? So this is this interaction we saw at the level of cancelling. The -2, that is, like a counteracting. The pursuit of one objective counteracts another objective. For example, pursuing policies to boost consumption in order to promote economic growth may counteract the objectives to reduce waste and greenhouse gas emissions. Increasing human habitation in flood-prone areas or agriculture into drought-prone areas may increase important social targets in the SDGs, but can lead to decreased resilience against climate-related events such as flooding or drought. So, if you see, like increasing human habitation, in flood-prone areas or agriculture into drought-prone areas, may increase important social targets in the SDGs. So, like the human, intervention in, like such places is definitely going to, like a like a help, like building the human society over there. But again, it kind of it puts, like those people, in danger also, because what if, like these kind of, like natural, like catastrophes, if they occur, if they struck, okay, so they are going to, like take a toll on the human society, life, goods also, right? So it means key, like a such interventions of human habitation in these, like risky areas, risk prone areas, may give you, like some negative, like interaction, based on, like that situation. Okay, so if this situation actually arises, if it occurs, in some time, so there will be some direct, like a negative impact on it, and that is, falling under -2 at the level of counteracting. So it means like pursuing policies to boost consumption in order to promote economic growth may counteract the objectives to reduce waste and greenhouse gas emissions. So in a way, in nature, if you see, this is, like a counteracting, this is going to, like a hinder, with the, like any, such initiatives, any such interventions. Now coming down to the label, like a -1, that is constraining. A mild form of negative interaction when the pursuit of one objective sets a condition or a constraint on the achievement of another. Okay, so a mild, format, like the -3 and -2 labels we saw, those are, like a very high level of, like a negative impact. But this one is in a mild, like a milder form. For example, efficiency objectives for agricultural water use set conditions for how access to irrigation can be provided, and the climate change mitigation objective limits the options as to how to pursue energy access objectives. In 2030 agenda, many targets impose constraints on others. These are important since they can help ensure that development strategies are sustainable over time, help achieve targets with minimum mitigation or rehabilitation costs for other objectives, and help ensure that they respect boundaries of the natural resource base. Of course, ensuring that conditionalities are taken into account requires that these have been appropriately mapped. So if you see, this is, well, of course, is the milder, like a form of like a negative interaction, negative impact. Okay, but yes, it is in the negative side. So there may be like some impact, some negative like a relationship with the like from one variable to the another variable, right? So yeah, but yeah, some level of like checks and measures can be taken up to reduce or to minimize like that negative impact. Okay, so as it is mentioned over here, some conditionalities are taken into account requires that these have been appropriately mapped. So this should be appropriately mapped, like assessed and like a controlled in order to minimize like that negative like interrelationship and bring it to the towards at least like a plus minus 0 0 level, neutral level. So next one, we have come to the plus minus 0 0, that is like a consistent. That means there is no like a direct like impact of positive or negative like a dimension. A neutral relationship where one objective does not significantly interact with another, or where interactions are deemed to be neither positive nor negative. So very simple, straightforward. Okay, so either no interaction of any nature, like a positive or negative, or having maintaining the same. So that also comes under this thing. Then we are moving towards the positive side. Plus one, that is like enabling. The pursuit of one objective enables the achievement of another objective. For example, providing electricity access in rural homes facilitate the pursuit of education for all, as it allows the rural poor who have to work after school to do homework at night with the aid of electric lighting. Outdoor electric lighting also increases safety in the streets, enabling more women to attend evening courses or school at night. So you can see the very apt example given over here is for the electricity and the like a level of education which is going to rise with the help of like a such like a facility given in the rural and urban areas. Okay, so for like education, so for all age like groups, even for kids and even for elderly, if they are registered for like improving like their education levels. Okay, so it's going to like help them to like do their assignments and read at night, right, and work like in the like off duty hours, even for the like people who are like working somewhere, right. So this is this like a noble initiative which has like a direct relationship, if you see like electricity supply and the level of education. Okay, and majorly it I think it helps in the rural areas, because like city areas they still have some options of keeping power backup, or maybe going for like other power like generating like a system such as DG sets, etc. Okay, so to like a facilitate like a several like a such like a thing. So education being one, another very critical like service area is about like a healthcare. Okay, so these days if we see like hospitals, they utilize like a number of equipment, tools and machines, etc., and test labs to facilitate like health services to their user, right. But in the event of no electricity supply, like this hospital is going to come to an operational halt. Okay, which may create like a problem. So like if you see there is a like a direct relationship. So regular supply of electricity will definitely improve like a good like a supply of a good like a rendering of services of like a a healthcare and other like a infrastructural like a things. So that's a direct and enabling like a label. The next we have at +2 level, that is for reinforcing. One objective directly creates conditions that lead to the achievement of another objective. For example, strengthening resilience and adaptive capacity to climate related hazards will directly reduce losses caused by disasters. Providing access to electricity reinforces water pumping and irrigation systems. The SDG targets and goals provide numerous possibilities for synergies. So in this case, you definitely like you will see. I suppose like a healthcare also should like a fall under like this one. in +2 level, because if there is a regular and like a continuous power supply, definitely it's going to have its positive like impact on the infrastructure like available to the people of that place, so they can avail like such critical like facilities anytime they want. And some other examples given over here, like reinforces water pumping and irrigation, right? So definitely supply of electricity is in modern society is essential for carrying out any and every like our activities, because we are so dependent on like electricity for our like everyday and regular like requirements. Next we have is for +3 at indivisible level, the strongest form of positive interaction in which one objective is inextricably linked to the achievement of another. For example, achieving end all forms of discrimination against all women and girls everywhere would in itself lead to the achievement of ensure women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic and public life. So very apt example in this case also, like how are we going to achieve like a certain like like a objective, certain like a aim. So in this case like ending all forms of discrimination against like all women and girls everywhere is definitely very strongly like a connected and interrelated to like this one, ensuring women's full and effective participation and equal opportunities for leadership at all levels of decision making in political, economic and public life everywhere. Okay, so it definitely helps and boosts like this relationship from this to the next one. So it is kind of so like interdependent, so directly related that it is like indivisible, we cannot separate it out. If you are working on the first one directly and very directly, the second one also is taken care of, right? Because the aims, ultimate aims and objectives of both are same only, right? So whether you work for one or two, it's going to serve the overall like a purpose of both of these, which is almost common. So in this case it becomes indivisible and very highly like interrelated. Horizontal and vertical interactions and coherence relationships that you can see over here. So we have sectoral coherence from one policy sector to another. We have transnational coherence from one jurisdiction to another. Then we have governance coherence from one set of interventions to another. Next we have multi-level coherence from global international agreements to national and local policy like levels. And finally we have implementation coherence from policy objective through instrument design to practice. So this is like more or less towards the like a practice part. Well, why these interactions are like important? Let's see. The 2030 agenda is often referred to as an integrated agenda, and its advocates, including the UN Secretary General, frequently described it as an indivisible whole. So this like a 17 SDGs like what we see they are so essential for like our society, and all of them are equally like essential and important, and that's why this whole wheel is one like a unit, it undivisible like a unit. You cannot remove either of like these 17 SDGs, because that makes them that will render incompleteness and a huge gap. Okay, so this is why like this is an indivisible whole, right? So that is the like a term given to this. What does this mean in practice? First, in contrast to the conception of the Rio pillars of sustainable development, in 2030 agenda, the social, environmental and economic dimensions of sustainable development are intertwined and cut across the entire framework. So if you see, even though these are three different like aspects of sustainability, but they are like they can't exist like in isolation. So sustainability works in the combination of these three aspects, and that is where like this word comes, intertwined and cut across the entire framework. Indeed, while most of the 17 goals have a clear starting point in one of the three pillars, most goals actually embed all three dimensions amongst their targets. For example, SDG 2 end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture contains targets related to social, like malnutrition and vulnerability, economic, agricultural productivity and financial services, and environmental dimensions, e.g. Genetic diversity and climate resilience, etc. Okay, so this is where it becomes important, since the underlying foundations are also like intertwined, and they are composed of multiple aspects, like sustainability aspects we are seeing ESEs. Okay, so ESE is a composition of this overall these three aspects over here, and then it together it forms this a sustainability, the loop of sustainability. Okay, so it's an indivisible like a whole. The moment I remove at least one of these, the remaining two will are going to miss this third one. Okay, and only after its addition it can be called as a complete like a format, complete like a structure. That's why these interactions are important to understand, because how the different components are going to function, going to work, and they will have some relationship, some impact on the next ones. That's why it becomes essential to understand the whole phenomenon. The second point here is there are significant interactions between goals. Staying with the food SDG example, a commonly discussed set of interactions lies in the nexus between food, water and energy. For instance, water is required for energy production in cooling thermal power plants and generating hydropower. Energy is required for water pumping and irrigation systems, and water is needed for irrigation agriculture. There are also competing resource requirements. For example, food production may compete with bioenergy production for all the same land or water. However, the interactions with SDG 2 also stray into several locations. SDG areas such as reducing food waste, health, sustainable business practices, conservation of marine areas, and right to or control over land and resources. So these ones also, if you see, they carry some bearing, and they are dependent on each other. Okay, that's why also it becomes imperative to consider them. In the policy arena, most discussions about coherence and interlinkages in the year 2030 agenda have focused on the existence of trade-offs and synergies between sectors and the need to map them out and identify ways to alleviate or remove trade-offs and maximize synergies. However, this area currently has a weak conceptual and scientific underpinning and no common framework work to analyze the nature and strengths of these interactions and the extent to which they constrain or enable policy and action. Indeed, there is a need to develop guidance and tools that can help policymakers and investors identify and manage synergies and trade-offs across globes and targets. Before the stage of policy formulation, including the setting of context specifics such as national or local targets and indicators, research needs to be conducted into the nature and dynamics of the interactions. Below, we introduce a more refined typography of interactions for use in empirical research into SDG interactions. Such research needs to be developed to provide a usable knowledge base for both policy level decision support and the design of implementation strategies. So very interestingly, you can see over here how these linkages are playing their role at local regional and national levels, and how they are essential to be allowed to communicate and interact.